It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show right here on Expresso. Of course, it is a Wednesday and it's time for another edition of our feature where we focus on the unconventional side of the law, and it's called So Now What? And we're joined once again by expert lawyer and director at legalese.co.za, Eitan Stern. Now, today's question is, I am on holiday and I didn't get what I paid for. So now what? Today we'll be focusing on what your legal rights and recourses are. Welcome, Eitan Stern. You look very chilled. You're very, like...
I'm on holiday.
You're about to travel. But, you know, Eitan, traveling and planning to travel can be quite stressful. There's a lot that's involved before you actually get to the destination.
Exactly.
So, two questions I've got for you. The first one, what happens and what can you do when you realize that the sort of incorrect booking has been made for you? Okay, so you're not getting what you asked for. Two, how does accountability differ in terms of who committed the error when the booking was made?
Okay, great. So the first thing you can do is try not to panic. If you've got an incorrect booking, the best thing to do is to contact whoever the booking's with. So if it's with an airline, contact that airline. If it's with a hotel, contact the hotel. Airlines are generally not very understanding if you made the error. So if you've made a mistake on your booking, which is the likelihood if there's an error on an airplane booking, that it's probably your fault because you were the one putting in the details. Airlines are generally not understanding. And then there's probably going to be a penalty to pay for an incorrect booking. But hotels and airlines might decide to have certain policies to make it more attractive to book there. So they might be more understanding by their own policies. So it's going to be really important to check the terms and conditions. And of course, if something's gone wrong and if the airline or hotel has made the error, you've always got the Consumer Protection Act to protect you. And if they've made an error and you haven't got what you paid for, you can CPA them and...
get it sorted out.
Yeah, they should sort it out. But it's very important to check the terms and conditions.
Absolutely. Now, when it comes to cancelling bookings, who's responsible for that? Should I take it on myself? Do I then go to the agency? How does that work? And how does that affect in the long term of the whole stressful scenario?
Okay, cool. So once again, cancellations. If you're cancelling a booking, airlines are generally not going to be understanding. In the law, they don't have to be understanding unless it falls under the Consumer Protection Act. But they might, with their terms and conditions and to try and entice bookings, allow a little bit of flexibility. But generally, airlines are not flexible. It's just not their business model. They make additional revenue from ticket changes. Hotels might be more flexible with bookings, but so it's really important just that you check the policies before you make any booking on what the cancellation policy is, because it's always going to say it's in the terms and conditions. So if you're worried about cancelling, just make sure you've booked a place that has a lenient cancellation or changing policy.
I kind of want to ask this, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Ask away.
Would you then get like an agency to do all the travelling, then that way they take the insurance of it, or would you then have it solely on you?
Yeah, I mean, it's really a preference sort of thing. Me, myself, I've never booked a flight in my entire life. I've got a travel agent who I love booking with. She's amazing. She always, you know, she just understands. I'm going to put the wrong flight to the wrong date. I'm the guy that's going to make the mistake.
Stress.
So for me, it eliminates the stress. Other people wouldn't dream of using a travel agent. They could just do it themselves. So it really just depends on you and your preference. But if you're using a travel agency, then you're going to have to see that generally will be their job to make the change, but they're not going to be liable for the errors. If you want to cancel your booking, they're just going to be a middleman between you and the airline.
And I suppose you still do have terms and conditions even when you do book with an agency.
Yes, 100%.
Sometimes the stress of traveling, you know, isn't an administrative one. Sometimes it's got to do with the fact that the weather might be bad.
Yeah.
You find yourself stuck at the airport, flights delayed all over the place. You might miss an important meeting or important engagement that you're going for. What happens then?
What happens then? Okay. Great question. So it's really going to depend on whether it's a local or international flight. In South African law, local flights, airlines, according to our law, are not liable for any damages that you incur as a result of delayed flights. The airline themselves might have certain policies that will compensate you in one way or another, but according to our law, they're not required to.
Oh, okay.
When it comes to international flights, that's different. So international flights, it's really going to depend on what airline you're flying with and what region you're flying in. So if you're flying into Europe, there's a treaty in Europe or laws in Europe that say that the airline, if you're delayed on your flight, they have to compensate you with a meal and accommodation if it's over a certain amount of time. But that's going to depend on what region you land up in. Also interesting to know, if you fly the same airline for 2 connecting flights, so, you know, you're flying...
SAA.
SAA. As a great example, if you're flying Cape Town, Joburg, and then Joburg, say, wherever they're going to get you to, they can't, if the Cape Town, Joburg leg is delayed, they can't leave you behind for the other leg, so it will be their responsibility. So it's always a bit safer to travel the same airline when collecting flights, even if you're going to save a few bucks in doing different ones, because you'll have that guarantee. And I know that because of Shona, my travel agent.
Why didn't I have you earlier in my life? Like, I think 2 years ago, I had 2 different ones. They left me in Johannesburg. I almost had to hike from Johannesburg, but it's okay. Now that I know you...
That's going to be a hell of a hike.
I'm glad you didn't have to go through that, honestly. Eitan Stern is still here. It is a Wednesday. It's Legal Matters. We're looking at the unconventional side of the law. Any questions you've got for him, Expresso Morning Show, SABC3. Of course, it's the perfect time now with everyone looking at holiday plans. You want to make sure that you are protected, that you've got your rights in order when you embark on your travels.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Now what? We continue with our conversation. Eitan Stern, director and lawyer out at Legalese. Of course, he's our legal eagle here on your Feel Good Breakfast show, equipping us with all the information and details you need to know, especially around this time of the year where everyone's looking to plan their holidays, your legal rights where travel is concerned.
Absolutely. So earlier we were talking about delayed flights.
Sure.
Now I want to get into it because I've had a lot of bad
You've gone through
issues.
a lot.
I've gone
Sounds
through
like
the
it.
most, but also lost luggage. How do we deal with that if it's lost or stolen? Panic. Throw it.
100% just panic.
Just cry.
Just cry.
Just drop down and cry.
There's nothing else to do. No, I'm joking.
What do you mean?
So now what?
So if you've lost your luggage, there's plenty you can do. Don't panic. So again, it's going to differ if you're on if it's on a local carrier or an international carrier, and there's going to be different rules around it. With local carriers, again, unfortunately, it's going to really just depend on the terms and conditions of that carrier. There are no laws, certainly in South Africa, around what local carriers have to do with lost luggage. But they're all going to have specific terms of what you have to do. So if you're on a local carrier, speak to the airline. International carriers, again, it's going to depend on the airline that you're on and then the region that you're in. Now, there's lots of international conventions and laws around aviation, and with lost luggage, there's actually something called the Montreal Convention, which governs how international airlines that have entered into this treaty are meant to deal with lost luggage. And what happens is they set a specific price, and the airlines have to compensate passengers up to that extent of that price, which is it's about $1,000 odd or something like that. No, probably more. I don't know what the price is offhand, but
there's an actual price that's
there's an actual price,
and
that's
it's set.
Exactly, and that's the maximum. So the airlines for international flights are going to be responsible for it up until that price.
But does this change when you have insurance? Because if you go in and you say, like, listen, I have Gucci, I have Givenchy, everything in my bag, obviously you give me $1,000 or whatever,
Great
it's not going to
question.
compensate.
Exactly. So what airlines can do is they now start to sell insurance on top of that, and insurance companies can... I mean, you can insure anything you want. So insurance companies will insure your luggage. So if you've got insurance over what you've lost, then you can just claim from your insurance company for any of the damages. That's definitely something you can do. And if you are traveling with expensive stuff, maybe worthwhile.
You want to get insured. But I think before we get ahead of ourselves, before you go on a holiday, you kind of have to get leave from your employer first, certainly for a lot of people, because it's not a given. What happens, what legal rights do you have should your employer say, sorry, you've made those travel arrangements, but leave denied?
Yes.
Because it can happen.
100%. So it's a really interesting question, that. So in South Africa, and I suppose all over the world, a lot of companies have what we call like a forced shutdown period over December. You guys probably have it here at Expresso. We certainly have it at Legalese, where office is going to close over a certain period of time, so there's going to be no work. Your company can force you to take your leave over that period of time. If you then want to take leave in another part of the year, you can apply and you can ask your company, but they're not obligated to give it to you. They can allow you to do it. Maybe they might allow you to do it as unpaid leave. But if a company is shutting down over the Christmas period, then you can be forced to take your leave. What happens in the instance that you have leave? The company's given you leave and now they want to take it back. Again, it's an interesting question. It's really going to depend on the circumstances around it. In theory, I suppose your company could stop you from taking leave. Leave is only supposed to be taken when it's convenient. It's your right to take it, but it's only your right to take it when it's convenient to your company. So they can't stop you by saying it's always inconvenient So it's going to probably depend on when it's reasonable.
Do you have any legal rights to claim from your employer then? Because I've booked the holiday, I've paid for the flights, I've paid for my hotel. You said leave granted, and then you decide, oh, something's happening.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're taking it back.
Okay, we can think that through. That's a super interesting question. You know, I suppose in law, you always have the right to claim from someone who's caused you damage. So if your employer has unfairly stopped you from taking leave and it's caused you damage, you could definitely claim that from them. And if it turned out they did something wrong or unlawful, you could probably get paid for the damage. You might lose your job through the whole thing, but you could certainly claim for it. So it's really going to depend on whether your employer is being reasonable or unreasonable in it. Yeah.
No, that's very interesting. I think that you are amazing, and I'm going to take you every time. I'm going to phone you every time, and you need to make sure
New York, Bahamas, where are we going?
Where are we going? New York first, New York first. Eitan Stern, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you here for So Now What?
So now what? Hopefully that answers your questions around legal rights when it comes to travel.